Unclear scientific writing is a serious problem. The literature is plagued with obscure, convoluted, jargon-filled, and boring writing. And this poor writing hinders interdisciplinary science, slows scientific advancement, and contributes to communication gaps between scientists and the general public. But the good news is that you can help to fix this problem by writing science in plain English with a set of key principles. That is the core message in this excellent book, Writing Science in Plain English by Anne E. Greene. This short book is an essential resource for anyone who seeks to write science efficiently, from undergraduate students working on posters to established scientists writing manuscripts and grant proposals. I've taken a lot of the principles in this book and applied them to my writing and editing. And when people ask me what books I recommend on scientific writing, this book is at the top of that list. And that's why we are discussing this book in this first episode of Book Club. In this ongoing series, I will distill summaries and highlights from some of my favorite books on writing, productivity, and more. And if we haven't met, hello, my name is Crystal. I'm a trained biomedical scientist turned clinical researcher and now scientific and medical editor. Since 2011, I've collaborated with researchers to help them publish in high-impact journals and secure federal and foundation funding. And I've trained thousands of researchers and other professional writers all over the world to equip them with the principles, resources, and systems that they need to write well. And since 2021, I've been running my signature course, Scientific Writing Simplified, which is in the Redwood Inc. Academy, where hundreds of researchers and professional writers have taken my courses to hone their writing skills with lots of amazing success stories. If you'd like to check out the Academy, there's more details in the video description. So, why do I recommend this book so often? First, this book is very approachable. Many books on scientific writing are quite long because they include details about what information scientists should include. But this book focuses entirely on how to craft clear, digestible, and accessible writing. And in only about 120 pages, you get principles, examples, and exercises to help you learn. And I'm going to share some of my favorite principles that Anne discusses in this book. First, Anne talks about what to think about before you write. For example, she talks about the importance of considering your audience before you even start writing. This is really important because I've noticed that many authors look at their writing as though they are writing to share information with readers. But you need to consider not only how you are delivering the message, but also how readers are receiving that message and using that information. So really, you are not writing to your readers to share information with them. You are writing for readers to give them information that they can understand and use in a meaningful way. In the book, Anne also describes the importance of considering the register of your writing. In other words, how formal do you want the writing to be? Because the more formal your writing is, the harder it is to understand. Now, I have noticed that many authors will use complex writing under the guise that complex writing is formal or academic writing. But I assure you, and this book will assure you, that you can write formally and professionally in a way that is easy for readers to understand. Another thing that Anne talks about considering before you write is the tone. She writes, choosing the right tone influences how the audience feels about you and your subject. In scientific writing, we try to keep our tone neutral, but since most of our writing is persuasive, we should adopt a tone that projects confidence rather than doubt. In my experience, many authors believe that persuasion is achieved by using promotional language or words like innovative, cutting edge, or revolutionary. But persuasion is so much more than promotional language, and tone can help you convey confidence and excitement in a way that is far more convincing and persuasive than promotional language. Another thing that I really like about this book is that Anne talks about why storytelling is important in scientific writing. I have found that many authors do not consider scientific writing as storytelling. And early on, I was one of them, until I read this book. Storytelling is a powerful way to communicate information. We have been telling stories for millions of years as a way to connect and relay information. So storytelling is a powerful way to connect with your readers and relay information about your science. In the book, Anne elaborates on this and talks about the importance of making characters subjects and their actions verbs, so that every sentence in your document tells a little story. She also talks about the power of strong verbs and the importance of placing subjects and verbs close together. This chapter alone can significantly improve your writing through the power of storytelling. Another thing that Anne talks about in this book is what order to place information in your sentences. Oftentimes, authors will write sentences in isolation and focus on whether or not that particular sentence is clear. But less often do they think about how that sentence flows or connects to the surrounding sentences. But by considering the order of information, you can help to create flow in your writing. In the book, Anne talks about the importance of sharing old information before new information by putting old information at the beginning of sentences and new information at the end of sentences. And this concept is actually really important for learning. It's a way of building on what readers already know and attaching new information onto that knowledge. So by writing old information to new information, you're going to make it a lot easier for your reader to learn new information as they read your writing. In the book, Anne also talks about how voice influences clarity. What is voice? Voice basically indicates whether the subject of a sentence is giving or receiving the action. In scientific writing, the use of active and passive voice has been a hotly debated topic for decades. Traditionally, scientists thought that passive voice would show their objectivity in their writing. But it turns out that passive voice actually makes the writing harder to understand, and it strips away the power of storytelling. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about when to use active and passive voice, but if you're interested, I have a free course on this exact topic. I'll add a link to the course in the description. Another thing that Anne does well is address principles that help with readability. Now, you might only think about readability when writing for the general public, but readability is just as important for experts. And Anne discusses two of the biggest factors in readability. The first is why to vary sentence length. Many researchers write with medium to long sentences that are hard and frankly boring to read. But shorter sentences improve readability. But you don't want to write with sentences that all have the same length. In this book, Anne talks about the importance of varying sentence length in your writing. She talks about how varying the length of your sentences helps you add rhythm to your writing that makes it more engaging and interesting to read. The second readability factor that Anne talks about is word length. In the book, Anne discusses why you need to choose your words with care. And one of those ways is by using short words instead of long words to make your writing easy to read and understand. She talks about how authors will use big words, hoping that the big words will make them sound smart. And I've met many authors who think that they need to use long words to sound formal, scientific, academic, professional, or prestigious. But from the reader's point of view, these long words make writing hard to read and understand. Now, I understand that sometimes you need to use long words for technical terms, equipment names, or other things. But when you can use a shorter word that has the same meaning, use the shorter word. I like to take advice from George Orwell. Never use a long word where a short one will do. In the book, Anne also talks about why to rethink jargon and technical terms that you use in your writing. This can also be a challenging one because people can view jargon as a way to fit in with other scientists in their field, like being part of the tribe. In fact, there was a study that looked at jargon use between people with higher and lower status. They found that lower status individuals compared to high status individuals are more likely to use jargon in their communication and conversations with others. They then say that they found support that jargon use is a novel form of status compensation that they call compensatory conspicuous communication. In other words, people with lower status, such as those earlier in their career, use jargon to try to compensate for their lower rank. But if we look at jargon through the lens of readability, jargon can make your writing harder to read and less accessible to people in other disciplines or across society. Anne talks more about word choice in the book. For example, she talks about why to use consistent language to make the reader's job easy. This one is often a hard one for authors to learn. It was certainly a hard one for me to learn. I still remember in college when I wrote an essay and my English professor took a red pen, circled similar words that I used in my writing, and then drew lines between the similar words. I still have this image in my mind of the red circles with connecting lines that were highlighting the words that I used that were the same. And I think the fear of seeing those red circles and lines made me avoid using similar terms in my writing for a long time. But using similar terms in scientific writing can help readers to more easily understand the message that you want to convey. Another part of the book that I'm sure you'll like is her chapter on how to omit needless words. Scientific writing is full of word limits, character limits, and page limits that can be really challenging to meet. Now, I love a good word count challenge, but I know that not everyone feels this way. In this book, Anne shares a few strategies for condensing text, including reducing redundancy, effectively using meta-discourse and transition words, and using affirmatives instead of negatives. Now, there are many other ways that you can condense text that Anne does not talk about. So in the description box, I'll add a link to a free downloadable resource I created to give you more strategies for condensing your writing. In the book, Anne talked about several other factors that can enhance your writing, such as making parallel lists, how to design your paragraphs, and how to arrange your paragraphs, among other things. But the details I've shared today are some of my favorite from the book. And through the principles in this book, Anne profoundly changed how I think about scientific writing. This book is an excellent resource. If you are generally interested in writing for your readers and making their job easy, and if you want to write in a way that encourages interdisciplinary science and bridges the gap between scientists and the general public, this book is for you. I highly recommend this book to enhance your writing. Now, if you are looking for advice on enhancing your writing process, you might check out this video on the best order to draft the main sections of a research manuscript. And if there's something else that you'd like to learn more about, let me know in the comments. I create these videos for you, so I want to make sure I'm creating something that you will find valuable. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.